I would like to invite a friend up to the stage. She is Jessica O'Neill, President of Business Operations for the Houston Dash and Dynamo soccer teams. She knows something about women's achievement, both on the field and in business. Soccer is the world's game. She is working to educate and spread the word and get fans excited about it here in Houston. Welcome, Jessica.
It's so inspiring to hear you, Tracy, and just to hear the growth of your business and everything. So Jessica, you're also the only woman the president of business operation over both a men's soccer league, a soccer team, and a women's soccer team. So like many women in this room, it means that you run multiple businesses under one umbrella. What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, sure. It is so great to be in the room. Welcome to Houston. If you haven't felt the warm welcome, I've been here for about 2.5 years. I've joked about Houston that the hospitality and the weather are warm. It is a place where they welcome you with open arms. Hopefully you all have felt that if you are not Houstonians and are visiting us for the last couple of days. So thank you. So yes, I'm in a different but related world. To Tracy's point, you don't win the Super Bowl by chance. In our case, you don't win the MLS Cup or the NWSL Championship by choice. So my role, just to zoom out a little bit, I do work for 2 teams. The Dash are a part of the National Women's Soccer League, which is the best women's soccer league in the world. There's only 14 teams in the league. This is Houston's only professional women's team and one of only 2 women's sports teams in the state of Texas. There's a WNBA team in Dallas. So we're really, really, really proud of the amazing work our female athletes are doing on the field in soccer, but also basketball. You see a lot of growth there as well. The Dynamo are the Major League Soccer team in Houston, one of 4 men's professional teams. And to Tracy's point, both teams represent the world's game. This is a game that speaks all languages, and Houston loves this sport, whether you call it soccer, football, or football, depending on your language at home. So it's absolutely amazing. What that means, as far as what I do, is different every day, just like your worlds are. To Tracy's point, again, it is all about the people that we work with. So we have about 200 staff, just to give you a context of what it means to run 2 soccer teams. About 60 of those, 60 to 70, work on the soccer operations side. So I would equate that to back of house. They are the coaches, the trainers, the performance team, the medical staff. They support the players. Each team has about 30 players, all professional. We happen to have sort of a youth pathway. So there's teams below that, but they're not at the professional level. So it's about 75 soccer staff, I call it. These are, they're on the field, is their job every single day. And then the rest are our business staff. So that includes IT, HR, finance, administration, et cetera, to support that ecosystem. But also the biggest growth opportunities for us are the revenue and marketing arms, the fan-facing operational pieces. We run our stadium, we run our training facility, and we run our corporate headquarters. So you talk about stress. The more buildings, you all can relate to this, the more buildings you seem to have, the more things that go wrong, the more air conditionings that break, the more leaks that happen, just the little things. So the unique part of our job is that, again, some similarities here. We have about 200 people, but we welcome tens of thousands of people almost every weekend to our stadium in a very public-facing way, in which every decision we make, every win or loss, is in the paper, it's on social media, it's broadcasted. If a player does anything great or not so great, that is also very public. So that's an opportunity. It also can be a challenge, but that's the day-to-day in a short way, and happy to dive into anything that's helpful of sort of what it means to be running 2 soccer teams from a sense of how do I spend my days, which is putting out fires to the point, but also just trying to make sure that everybody has what they need to do their jobs, because there's quite a bit in front of us with a season as long as ours is.
How long is it?
So they start in January from a preseason standpoint, and the price of success in soccer is that you play all the way through December. So Christmas. The holiday break was, our group's chance to reset, and you get going again. So it's a bit of like going to battle every day, but it's amazing, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And let's dive a little bit more in the public element of it, because that's something that is there's so many parallels. When we're doing our prep call, it was really fascinating to realize like there is so much that is very relatable to restaurants. And that public element, it means you need to have a pretty thick skin. What are some of the strategies you've developed for that?
Yes, a thick skin. I think resilience is the most important. Really, it's not even a skill. It's something that people either have innately or they develop, but they develop with unfortunately, some things that have to make you resilient personally or professionally that you don't get fazed by very much. And it's been interesting to see, really the growth trajectory of soccer, but also as professional sports and how public facing they are. We really, to put it quite simply, we have to just make sure that we are not really fazed by much, especially for me in my role. I set the tone. I run pretty hot. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, how do you know if you need to take the temperature up or down? I said, well, first of all, I never need to take the temperature up. Like, I wake up with this amount of, maybe as the years go on, that will change because it will be exhausting. It's becoming increasingly exhausting. But I just don't have to do it. So for me, it's knowing myself to know that I only ever need to go one direction, and that's to sort of stop, slow down, read the room, ask people how they're doing, figure out where our gaps are. The public-facing part is interesting. I'll give you all an example. 6 weeks ago, we parted ways with our general manager of the women's team. It was a big splash when we hired the general manager of the women's team because it was the first time that the women's game had a role like that. It exists. It's the sporting director. It's the person in charge of the roster. It exists in the NFL and the MLB and all other professional sports, but women's soccer just hadn't had that. Unfortunately, there was this tendency from a financial standpoint where everyone was doing 2 or 3 or 4 jobs. You were the PR person and you booked the team's travel, and maybe they would ask you to shag balls on the training field. Like, that's not how a professional team operates. You have to have specialized roles, specialized people doing one thing and owning that thing. So to hire the general manager for the first time was incredible. We went and found a former professional athlete who had played, because I didn't play the game at a high level. I played volleyball growing up, but soccer was not my sport. I wanted to make sure that we had somebody in our ecosystem that could resonate with players and speak to them in a way that was unique. Well, that's all great until the team doesn't do well for a couple of years, and you have to make a performance-based decision, which is we need to go in a different direction. We need to find a new leader. There are gaps, and there's so much excitement, but at the end of the day, this is a performance-based job. Somebody told me once, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. And that resonated with me so much, because the heat is always there. You all know that and feel that. Again, literally here in Houston, but just generally, the pressure is on constantly. It's how we respond to that. This is a business. There are tough decisions that have to be made every single day. So, days that you go in and you have to tell people you're going to move in a different direction, especially in a leadership role, and then what do we do after that? It's the public facing, the social media, they're going to say what they want to say about any transaction that we make. I've learned to not read them. That's one skill. I don't even read what they say on social media, because they don't know what happens behind the scenes. You'll never know the whole story, and everybody has an opinion. The fact that they care is how we have a business. The fact that they are engaged and they feel passionately about our team is amazing, but it also means that they have an opinion because they care so much, but they don't have the full picture. So staying off social media is an important piece of keeping my sanity, at least. So yeah, the public-facing part is tough decisions like that, where it doesn't matter necessarily what's happening externally, as long as internally the players, the staff, the day-to-day, everybody feels like we have a plan. We will get through a transition, which will be tricky when you have a leadership gap and you're looking to fill it. People have questions about their contracts, about their career paths, about if they're going to stay with our team. Those are real. And in times like those, I just lean in, because you have to. As we talk about captaining a ship, when it's in rough waters, somebody's got to hold the steering wheel of that ship. And in this room, I know that's everybody whose job it is to hold the steering wheel, because otherwise there's a lot of people who sort of look around like who's going to take the ship, and somebody's got to do it. And I think that's the part of the job that makes it really stressful in some ways, but also empowering to know that it's in your hands.
You're making me wonder, how much details do you go into in terms of the, internally, right? In terms of the decision-making process, like how candid and transparent are you with the 100+ people who work with you? Because that communication piece is often where things break, right? And where rumors start, and where other people might be on social media and seeing things. So how transparent and open are you with everyone?
They would tell you never enough, and you all probably feel that. I think the balance, at least that I ask myself, is if it were me on the other side, how much of a personal how would I feel if somebody was speaking with a large group of my colleagues about how I was doing professionally and individually and, one-on-one private conversations? I just don't feel like that's fair to broadcast all of those layers and elements. So I think it's important to discuss there's a level of accountability expected in performance environments, of which, again, the restaurant industry is one you're constantly having to understand if you're where you want to be or just below and why, what's driving that. I think somebody shared with me once that, people have the lens that they have based on their perspective and their experience. So I can't fault somebody for not understanding how the entire business works when their job is not to see the entire business. Their job is to see the one particular piece of the business that they are most focused on, which also means the flip side, right or wrong, it will be challenging for them to understand, all of the why and the minutia that they might want to understand about decision-making processes. But I've also found the high-performing, high-potential individuals are focused on themselves and how they can contribute to the larger story. Those that are looking to sort of dwell on the drama and the gossip and they might not have enough to do, y'all, in which case we need to refocus some of that attention. But also maybe it's not the right fit, because I think in a high-performance environment, cream rises to the top, but you also want to be around others that are as driven. Maybe in different ways. I've realized that looks differently. We can't hire just people who look and feel and sound like ourselves. That's failure from a leadership standpoint. But innately, how does someone, what motivates them? How do they show up every day? So unfortunately, that's a balance that I don't think we've quite figured out in we've been through a pretty significant turnover in our organization as we have a new ownership team and a new strategy and a new direction and new investment. With that level of resources comes increased expectations. We've had to either ask people if they're in or they're out in that changing narrative of expectations, and that's come with a lot of questions from others about how and why and when, to which I've realized that we can be as vocal and as transparent as we are able to be and still protect at least my value, which is that there's some level of confidentiality in individual conversations in people's careers.
And what you said about remembering that that a lot of people do not have the full picture. I think that's something that we all need to remember, right? And and giving ourselves, setting those boundaries basically, and being like, okay, you're running a restaurant, you're running a business. You might be the only person. You might be one of 3 or 4 who really have that full picture. And the fact that you don't necessarily owe everyone else that, because that's your job basically, to be handling the full picture. So
I learned it's exhausting trying to make sure everybody likes you. They have to respect you, but they won't always like you or agree with you. I think the challenge in healthy conflict is a part of a great team, but there is a balance. So pretty early on in my career, I had a lot of questions about how I got to the position I was in, my age, my experience, the lens at which I brought. It didn't matter. The people that had the opportunity to give me a chance believed that I could do it. So everything else was just noise. And tuning out the noise, I think, is the hardest part, but also the most important part, making sure that the people in your circle, that noise you listen to and feel supported by, but that circle should be really protected to make sure that it's only the people who have truly your best interest at heart.
And so you're obviously used to dealing with successes and failures when you're handling sports team. What are some of your personal strategies for handling losses and failures? And then how do you motivate your team? And I don't necessarily mean the soccer teams themselves, but really the staff team around that.
Yeah, I for better or worse, I take every day one day at a time. So, whatever, I try to make the most of the day in front of me. And while, again, to Tracy's point, balancing what is it that we're trying to do each day, each week, each month, each year, and where is that going to get us? But I am a little bit reflective when I think we're only guaranteed today. That's not something that's lost on me, and we have to make the most of it. So when it does help me when things are especially challenging, because we tell our team the sun will come up tomorrow. It will absolutely come up tomorrow, and it's a new day and a new opportunity to move forward. We collectively have about 50 times a year where we open our doors to to fans for a regular season match, which means we won't win all 50. In this beautiful sport, you can tie, so you might not even lose. You might be in the middle. You don't know if you feel good about that or bad about that, but that's a soccer thing. So either that resonates with you or that doesn't. It's very bizarre. I think it's just knowing you have another shot to show up the next day and hopefully have learned something. So every single opportunity in which, on paper might have been a challenge or an obstacle or a failure, I have learned so much more than the opportunities where we were at the top or things were easy or we were winning. I've been a part of one championship winning team last year, actually, and one Super Bowl appearance where they lost. And I think, to see the balance of what it takes to take a win, to create this winning environment is a balance of confidence and humility in the way that people show up every single day. They're confident enough to know they can do the job, but they're humble enough to know they don't know everything that it's going to take to get there. And that balance I have looked for in the people that work on our business side, including the executive team that I've surrounded myself with. So it is, if you go too far one direction, it's a miss. But if you can find the sweet spot, it's a really, really incredible way where you don't have to motivate the team other than to make sure they remember when times feel down, the sun's going to come up tomorrow, and it's a new day and a new opportunity. And in this business, there's another chance to get it right, just as there is in ours. So there's big moments and there's little moments, and that is where I try to sort of be even keel. If my phone rings and something ridiculous happened, whatever it is probably not that crazy, unless it's a major tragedy, of which we experienced one of those at the beginning of the year, and that's where the perspective sort of kicks in. You're like, oh no, this is something that we'll have to support people through, and you got to balance your own support in doing that, but everything else is just minor. It's also just sports, y'all. We're just trying to win a game. We're not curing cancer. I'm not a principal at an elementary school like those people are. I'm not an ER doctor. We just sort of, I at least try to give myself some joy and levity in the sense of this should really not be that complicated. It's professional sports.
It horrifies me that a principal at an elementary school is now a high-risk job, right? And it's a kind that you're putting that on the same scale as ER doctor. Yeah. That's not normal, and that's not acceptable.
No, it's not. But you talk about sort of the responsibility in the hands of teachers and educators and the stress that they deal with. That perspective really, really helps me. I used to tutor at an elementary school once a week, and I would walk in there and just remind myself, this environment is very different. We are chasing after, as you all are, people's attention, their disposable income, their time, their free time. That is very, very, very valuable. But it is a want, it's not a need.
Before we get to a final piece of advice, you just mentioned disposable income, and that's something that it feels people have a little bit less of these days, which makes it challenging for businesses like yours or ours to capture that. So what are some of the things you've been doing to get people into the stadium and keep them excited to come in live?
Yeah, we're very focused on the value, as I'm sure you all think about. Somebody will pay what they have for what they think is worth it. There's a lot of competition in professional sports in Houston, but we're not just competing from our perspective, even with the other venues and sporting events. We're competing with taking your family out to dinner. We're competing with, going to the zoo that afternoon or going to the movies, because we are proud to have the most affordable ticket in professional sports in downtown Houston. It's where soccer sort of slots in as a very accessible, family-friendly way to go to live sporting events. But at the end of the day, there is only so much time and so many dollars when people are making decisions. So for us, it's making sure that the value is there, that the experience and the memories, again, very similar to what you all are looking to deliver in this industry, you cannot replicate that elsewhere. And for us, we get this opportunity to create this connection to our brands or to our teams. Sports is this amazing connector of all backgrounds and all ages and all experiences, where you're sitting next to somebody. You might have zero in common with that person, but you're rooting for the same team, the same result, the same players. And that unifying spirit is what made me want to make a career out of working in sports. The ups and downs are there, no doubt, but I absolutely love it. It is how I grew up spending my free time, the competitive spirit of you walk into a stadium, you don't know if someone's going to win or lose or tie, but that's what makes it fun. You go to the movies, you know it's going to happen, sort of. So I think, to me, it's making sure that value, that experience, those memories continue to be unique, hard to replace, engaging. We are very focused on everything, quite frankly, off the field, because we cannot control I cannot promise you that you're going to come to our stadium and see a win. I can promise you you're going to have great food, of which Hugo's and Urbe are actually represented in Shell Energy Stadium. We're very proud of that, as well as 8 other local restaurants and companies that we work with that are in and around our food story, the music, the connections, the experience, the sort of, again, the off-the-field stuff that people are looking for as well, because that's how competitive the sports industry has gotten. So focused on value, protecting it, maintaining it, the perceived value ultimately of what do all of our different customers need, because it's very different if you're bringing a family of 4 to the game versus if you're out with your girlfriends or your boy, you're just getting drinks. What you want and need and expect is different. We have to be able to meet all of those people where they are and know what they might need and anticipate it. And that's where I think the sports industry is probably a little bit farther behind the hospitality industry in watching that and knowing and understanding, but it's also the biggest growth opportunity.
All right, and now your final word of advice to these women who are, in a few hours, will re-enter the real world after this parenthesis in Houston.
It might be to cherish the few hours that you are in here and that you get to sort of separate. I think my favorite times are when I'm just, with my family on a beach or just, on a patio at Backstreet Cafe with a glass of wine and, I've stopped and paused for a second. Those are my moments, my reset moments, or I'm on a run by myself. The trend is I like to be we're not around so many people because so much of the job is showing up for others. And when you can stop and take care of yourself, of which you all are hopefully doing over this time and this incredible program that the group has set up. So I think to cherish the moments, but then also you never want to dread what you're going to step back into. So find the joy in whatever you're stepping back into, knowing the stress is obviously there. I've heard it, I've seen it, I felt that it is not all positive, the outlook. There's a lot of hard questions and decisions, but you all are here with each other who are also navigating some very similar things. And I think to balance the here and what's coming back in the future.
Great. Jessica O'Neill, thank you so very much.
Thank you all so much for having me. Thank you.